Hi all, I'm Andrew Blair White from Blair White's blog, and as like the first video that was hopefully put up before this one, explaining the Saturday card of the Leopardstown Racing Festival, I'm going to now take you through the Sunday card and my advice tips for them. I'm doing this also on the Thursday, and I suppose it was easier for the Saturday card because the declarations are in, so I knew exactly who was running. As for this one, they're still not quite in, so I'm basing it on probabilities more than anything else. Hopefully all of them run. If they don't, I'll kind of make an edit into the little bits of text that come up in the bottom corner. If I've told something new, I'll put that in or put an edit in the description below. If there's been a non-runner, one of my selections obviously doesn't run. So 8 races on this card from the 7 on the Saturday, and we start off with the Thomas Mullins Mares Handicap Hurdle over 2 miles 2 furlongs. I think the equivalent of this race, because it's always been on Irish Gold Cup Day, has been won the last 3 years by the Liam Cusack trained Who's That? But that mare does not go, because I don't think he's even in the initial declarations for this race. So Who's That will not make it 4 in a row. Hasn't been seen this season, actually, that mare. But anyway, that's another story. In this one, I like 2. Hopefully, they'll both run and both get in. One of them being Contingency, a mare for Willie Mullins. It's 2 from 2 over hurdles for Mullins. Last seen out in Galway in the middle of September. I don't really know why she hasn't been seen since. Perhaps there's been a hold up. Perhaps just waiting for a bit better ground. The ground looks to be okay because it's drying out all the time here. There doesn't seem to be much rain around. So it would be nice ground considering the usual at Leopardstown. Contingency, I feel, has a chance here, especially in a handicap, off a fairly low weight. They obviously have put her in this for a reason. And I was listening in on the Dublin Racing Festival kind of Q&A they did on the Leopardstown Racecourse Facebook page with Ruby Walsh and Davy Russell. And Ruby Walsh put up, or said they liked this Contingency in this race. They thought she was well handicapped and she could well go close in this race, and I'd certainly keep an eye out. The other one for me is Ellie Mack, trained by Henry de Bromhead. Was a fantastic winner. It's owned by a syndicate of people, set up in the honour of, unfortunately, one of the students who died in the Berkeley tragedy. A few of the people that are involved in that, some of the guys around my age, I knew, and they won obviously the opening race on Stephen's Day at 66-1 or something. It was kind of great scenes in the winners' enclosure. It was great for them, it was great for the syndicate. And Ellie Mack's got a good chance here because that maiden hurdle looks actually strong enough. Ante, I suppose, didn't really frank the form, but I don't think he stayed over 2.5 the next time out. Debouché looks to run later in the card in the Deloitte Novice. So, it's probably not a bad little race she's won there. She had a few issues on her first 2 starts for de Bromhead. First time out, her saddle slipped and got pulled up. Second time was in unraceable conditions, really. I think at Cork, and finished 7th by a long way. But got it all together at Leopardstown, and if she can translate that Leopardstown form again, surely she has a chance here of a nice enough racing weight. So Contingency and Ellie Mack for the Thomas Mullins Mares Handicap. Then we move on to the first grade one of the day, which is the Spring Juvenile Hurdle, won last year by the ill-fated Mega Fortune, unfortunately. He was a good horse, beat Bapome last year. This race looks a class race, one of the best races of the 2-day meeting, I feel, because 4 top-quality juveniles involved. Espoir d'Alain, Stormy Ireland, Farkless and Mr. Adjudicator, all of which look really good. And making a horse like Machuca, who's actually been not a bad juvenile, he's only in there to fill in the numbers if he runs. Now, it seems to be with the market that it's between Espoir d'Alain and Stormy Ireland. Stormy Ireland, 1 from 1 for Mullins, won by, I think, 55, 56 lengths at Fairyhouse on that start. However, Espoir d'Alain has done it properly And I still think Esbordalen has much more improvement to come from him. So I would be siding with him. Farkless was closing on him. Well, was he closing or was he sticking? He ran a very good race over Christmas and obviously a scope for improvement. The Elliott camp seemed to like him. That being said, Esbordalen, there was no way he was near the end of his running at Leopardstown. He could have found more and more, I think. Mark Walter, I watched the race back this morning, only gave him 2 backhanders. There's much more to come from this Esbordalen. And actually, as an each-way shot, I would be siding with the outsider of those 4, which seems to be this Mr. Adjudicator, who won by 7 lengths at Christmas on the second day of the Leopardstown meeting. That form has been franked. Room to Rome's ran a good race for Peter Fahey since. And also Pete So High, who finished 4th in that race, has gone on to win as well. Mr. Adjudicator looks actually not a bad price at 8-1 as a bit of an outsider, and could well even outrun potentially Stormy Ireland if Stormy Ireland has the small potential to be a bit of a bust, I feel. But he'll go on and win by 20 lengths or something. But anyway, Esbordalen and Mr. Adjudicator each way in the Spring Juvenile. We then move on to the Deloitte Novice over 2 miles, which has now been kind of thrown completely wide open because it looks like Sam Crow is going to run here. And if he does, he's going to take a lot of beating, I feel. You just can't really oppose him with any great confidence. I do think he'll have more of a race on in this one than potentially the one he could have ran in on the Saturday. Because Sharjah, I think, is a top quality horse. Would have won that, what is it, the Future Champions Novice Hurdle, I think, at Leopardstown over Christmas. Would have won it by 6 or 7 lengths under Patrick Mullins if he'd stood up at the last. So I think he's going to give him a race. But I can't with any confidence back against Sam Crow here. So I would be taking the odds on, unfortunately. I know that's not great betting, but you know, he's such a good horse and just done everything right, really. One I would put in as as my each way would be Real Steel. He fell in the kind of catastrophe with Sharjah at the last over Christmas. He looked beat by Sharjah, I must say. But I think he's got scope for a bit of improvement for that run. He's certainly better than Whiskey Sour, who went on to win that race. And he could well sneak into around maybe 3rd place. You know, if Sam Crow and Sharjah are 1-2, potentially Real Steel's the next best at 3rd. You know, Debouché is in there at 9-1. He finished 4th in a maiden hurdle. That's the only hurdle experience he has, but obviously a scope for improvement. Real Steel won his maiden and then fell in the Grade 1. So still potentially has something left in the tank. But Sam Crow for me and Real Steel maybe at 16-1 at an each way price. Then an interesting one, the 3 mile William Fry handicap hurdle, of which there seems to be a complete blot with this Total Recall. And just with the way it's been backed and the way it seems to be, you know, he's racing off, I think, 1-2-6 or something. And he's a 159, I think, race at Chaser. He's running off a ridiculous mark. I don't know, those probably aren't the official ratings, but he's running off much less. And surely has to win this if he turns up properly. So I'd say Total Recall. I know I'm backing favourites here, but unfortunately Total Recall just seems to have a lot going for him. In terms of outsiders, I still think for Mullins, he hasn't been able to get anything out of this Racing Pulse. But at one stage, Racing Pulse wasn't a bad horse over in England for Rebecca Curtis. And surely at some stage he has to show something. And potentially this could be the race at a price. And also Return to Vendor, who was pulled up last time out, but was a winner before that. He's got a potential each way squeak at a big price. I like him. He usually runs a good race. Last time was a bit of a blot in his copybook, but apart from that, he's usually quite consistent. Flowgas Novice Chase, 2 miles, 5 furlongs, Grade 1. Sutton Place seems to be the favourite for Gordon Elliott. He's got very good claims. However, I'm going to oppose, probably wrongly, but I'm going to oppose with Mona Lee. I'm a massive fan of Mona Lee. Devastated he fell at Christmas. I do think he would have won that race. He jumped fantastically on his Chase debut before that, and actually was jumping really well in that Christmas race before falling. Hopefully he will show no ill effects. He's in there around 4-1. He has a sniff, certainly. I think he's got a good chance. I think if he wins this, he'll win the RSA Chase at Cheltenham. I think he's a proper good horse. Each way, again, I'm looking to look a little outside the box. I'd be opposing Sutton Place just because I'm taking on with Monolith, and I'd oppose Invitation Only. Don't know why, he had his quirks as a hurdler, and I'm not convinced. But Alboom Photo won very nicely on Chase debut, beating Tycoon Prince, who franked that form nicely next time out when beating Bunkoff early. He then was going to win the Grade 2 Novice Chase on Stephen's Day at Limerick before falling at the last. That was a very unlucky effort. He's in here at 10 or 11-1. He could well run a nice race at a bit of a price. Irish Gold Cup, 3 miles, Grade 1, won last year by Sizing John, who went on to do great things. Harrington has our Duke in here, and I really, really hope our Duke can get back to what he was last year. A superb novice, brought into the Irish National. He went on to win the Irish National by 14 lengths despite being number 4, so he was carrying a fair deal of weight. Won it at a hack canter, was poor at Down Royal, didn't jump well, had kissing spines in his back, has got that sorted, seems to be in good form, and I really think he's got no, that's not how to say it, but he's got a very, very good credentials in this race. 5-2, 11-4, around that price-wise. Surely he's got a good chance. Oppose Annabelle Fly, not up to Grade 1 standard. I will eat my words if that turns out to be not the case, but I don't think Annabelle Fly's a Grade 1 horse. Kulultovic, I really like Kulultovic, but he's too inexperienced for me. So that means my each way shout will be Jackadam. I'm a big fan of Jackadam. I know loads of people aren't because he doesn't win that much, but I really like him as a horse, and I still feel a big race like this is in him. Maybe not this time because our Duke could be a good horse. Potentially, Kulultovic could be very good. Outlander could run well again. But Jackadam surely will get back to some level of form, and if he gets back to some level of form, he finishes in the first 3. There's no ifs or buts about it in my eyes. We need to just get through the last 2 quick enough. The Chanel Farmer Handicap Chase over 2 mile 5. Very interesting that the favourite seems to be Hell's Kitchen for Harry Fry. Is he going to come over? Not sure. Seems like he might. He's got obviously a good chance. Personally, I like Polydam. Didn't unfortunately stay in the Paddy Power. Drifted away into 10th. His performance before that when beating Acapella Bourgeois was very good. He has a sniff. Vu Morvan for Joseph O'Brien ran a great race in the Paddy Power from the front. Again, didn't quite stay and ended up finishing 5th. He's got a better chance down to 2 mile 5. And for me, a real abstract one, I suppose, is Last Goodbye for Liz Doyle. Ran a great race at the Cheltenham Festival last year in the Close Brothers Novice Handicap when finishing 5th to Tully East. He's got a sniff. If he brings that type of form, the slightly better ground brings something out of him. 2 mile 5 will suit. And yeah, I think he's at around 20-1. Not a bad each way's price. And finally, a graded Mare's Bumper, 2 miles. I can't look beyond the 2 Mullins horses. Colreevy and Relegate. I think Patrick Mullins will ride Colreevy. I suspect Katie Walsh will end up on Relegate. And it would not surprise me if it's a 1-2 between the 2 of them. Elliot has only got 1 entry. It's an unraced horse. I can't really look into that. There's no form to base it on. Colreevy and Relegate, both 1 from 1 under rules. Just seem to have the edge. Maybe Lady Ishia for Gavin Cromwell has a bit of a sniff. But Colreevy and Relegate in the Mare's Bumper to conclude what hopefully is a good weekend for Mullins. So that ends up the Sunday card. It was a bit rushed near the end. Sorry about that, but it was 8 races, so I'm trying to get them all in quick enough. Can't wait for this weekend. Should be fantastic. Loads of prize money, loads of top quality horses, loads of good clashes. Nap of the day for the Saturday was Faugheen. Nap of the day for this one, I'm going to go for Monolly in the Flowgas Novice. Monolly to win the Flowgas.